help, it's 37 degrees outside. No. 37, no. Go away. Go away. Today we are exploring the possibility if there is a spinoff. I've gotten quite a few requests for this. What will happen if there's a spinoff? What can happen if there's a spinoff? There's no one answer to this because the spinoff could be a couple of different things. They could start production. They could contract it out to another operating company. This would be similar to what ConocoPhillips is doing with their asset. They have the asset, they have 100% of the rights to it, and they're just contracting it out and keeping that upstream cash flow. So it depends what's going to happen if there is a spinoff and what you should expect if you have some of these shares with the spinoff. So let's get into it. And then at the end, we're going to come back, recap, and then make a conclusion. In this particular article, this person, which talks about stock spinoffs, this person talks about how when there is a spinoff, most people sell. They sell it off because the company has divested itself, and then shareholders receiving the spinoff shares will still find reasons to sell. They might not know much about the business, or that they just might have money and just go somewhere else. We saw that evident with MMTLP. When those shares began trading, people just assumed that that was their dividend amount and they sold. They cashed out. And then it went to 3 and people were like, yeah, cashing out. But that's a little bit different. But same regard, people see money in their account and they say, yes, I'll just sell this. People are very impulsive. So this man, he takes advantage of this. This person takes advantage of the sell-offs from the company and shorts things. So they do a step-by-step instruction of how to short. You're going to short the parent company. Then you're going to buy the parent company stock when issued. And then you're going to short the immediate spinoff. And then they explain how to do it and how much they plan to gain given this example by doing that. So this person has a negative view of spinoffs, and they claim how to, oh, it is a guy. This person, Rich Howe. Rich Howe has a negative view of spinoffs. Somebody asked a question and they never replied. It connotates that spinoffs can be bad because there's pressure, and then this guy sees it as a bargain and he shorts the parent. Well, he buys stock in the parent, shorts the spinoff. In this particular article, dated on May 30th of this year, 2021, this person, Greg, talks about how spinoffs impact investors in parent and subsidiary companies. Spinoff happens when it's not related to its company core competencies. Again, Meta is a metamaterials development company, and the Oro Grande Basin would essentially be, an oil production company. Again, this person, he explains about an immediate dip. That's the sell-off that this guy talked about. There's a sell-off. And this guy reaffirms there's usually a sell-off. So if we expect a spinoff out of the Torchlight assets and our MMTLP to be converted, again, we're going to experience another sell-off. The good thing for you is if you're original Torchlight holder, these shares were given to you for like zero. These shares were given to you for free, which may or may not be good for you. Some people are fine with holding. Some people don't like to see their portfolio in red. it's up to your personal preference. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Some people sell and then they're going to say, I'm going to buy back in the dip, you know, take profit, sell buy in the dip. Other people are like, I'm just going to hold. It depends on your personal goals, what you want to accomplish. There's no right or wrong way to do this. There's, you know, lots of ways you can do this, lots of combinations and permutations to accomplish your goals. Historically, spinoffs have been good for investors. On average, it makes the parent and subsidiary outperform the market during the 2-year or 24-month period following a spinoff. Investors who have been able to hodl through the dip have seen nice gains. Of course, you could always sell, buy back in, and then see some even better gains. New investors looking to take advantage of spinoffs' historical benefits must choose between investing in the parent, the subsidiary, or both. So this guy's summary says the 2-year period you'll see growth in the spinoff. Let's take a look at this section now. What is OIlco? Is OIlco going to be the spinoff subsidiary? I'm going to state some facts about what we know about OIlco and walk you through some things, and then I'm going to give you my opinion and how I've come up with my opinion based on this evidence here. Again, we're going to investigate the evidence in front of us, and then I'm going to hypothesize based on this evidence. Lots of people seem to think that this is going to be the spinoff, or that this was George's plan B in case the Torchlight assets, the Oro Grande assets, did not sell. I do not wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's something else. But let's examine the facts first. OIlco was established on August 31st. So if you look at Husbeth, New Husbeth Operating LLC New Husbeth was filed August 5th, 2021. The agent name is Robert D. Axelrod, and I talked about this with Smokey. Robert D. Axelrod was also the registered agent for Torchlight Energy. This is the old Husbeth. As you can see, Greg McCabe, it was the directing officer. John Berta was the CEO. So this was the old Husbeth, also known as Torchlight. And the agent is, again, Robert D. Axelrod. And then here's the agent. That's the agent address. The registered agent is somebody who can legally receive mail on your behalf. So if there's any legal mail that has a number attached to it, certified mail, they can legally receive this mail on your behalf. Whether legal purposes, tax purposes, it can be a person or an entity. It can be a person or a company. This was Robert D. Axelrod. He was the agent for Torchlight, aka Old Husbeth. Here's New Husbeth. We see Robert D. Axelrod. Okay, let's go to OIlco. Agent, Corporate Creations Network. What happened to Robert D. Axelrod? Where did he go? He seamlessly went to this transition, but then he disappears for OIlco. That's my first clue. It's this big corporate company. They have offices all over. One of them, there's different. One of them is Northwest Registered Agent. Another one would be LegalZoom. LegalZoom, you could incorporate a business, and they were legally registered agents in all 50 states, which means they had an office. Usually it's a big, huge office, and you have like a little suite desk in there. Desk in a suite. Okay, now let's go to the Nevada Comptroller, which is the Silver State. Okay, so this is the business entity search. We're on Nevada Silver Flume website. Okay, this is the stupidest thing. It's like a exam you gotta take. Please click the cube to the left of the red cylinder. Red cylinder, cube to the left. Okay. Hooray, I'm not a robot. My left or the cube's left? Okay, so we're on the Nevada business search. We're going to search for OIlco Holdings. As you can see, here's OIlco Holdings. Again, registered agent. It lines up. Corporate Creations Network. That's your contact name. So they're not giving away too much. Again, Corporate Creations Network. It's a big company that just does basically incorporating your business. These companies, it's funny, they'll charge you like $100 or whatever, but you can designate a person to be your registered agent. Okay. At least in Texas, you can designate a person. I don't know about Nevada, but Texas law, you can designate a person as long as they can legally receive your mail. I always find this funny because the address is wrong. So the old Torchlight address was like 5800 West Plano Parkway, Suite 3600. This goes like in the middle of the road and goes to a residential area if you Google Maps it. I did a whole video on this. Okay, so we know OIlco, George Palacaris. Okay, it seems to be a company right now. As George Palacaris is named the officer. Also, Corporate Creations Network is also the officer. I found that weird, but they're listed as the agent. So it's basically Palacaris' company. But it's interesting, or the agent as an officer. Usually you're not listed. So that's one clue that's really interesting. The next clue that is interesting is look at these shares. Look at these shares. So they have common shares at 250 million. This is just a holdings value. That doesn't, it just gives some value to these shares. It doesn't mean anything right now. And then preferred shares at 25 million. Okay, common and preferred. So we know Torchlight shares is just under 165 million shares, according to George Palacaris' tweet when somebody asked him. And then at most it could be 175 million according to previous filed documents with the SEC, but 165 million seems to be the final number. And then Metamaterials outstanding shares is like 280 million. So what are these shares? People, think that OIlco is going to be the plan B if the Torchlight asset doesn't sell, or maybe it's the spinoff. But if there's only 165 million shares of Torchlight, then how do you get this ratio? This is like some interesting math here. How does this work? This I'm not too sure of. And that's why I've come to my opinion that OIlco may not be a spinoff company. Although, because you already have Husbeth, you already have New Husbeth, right? So if New Husbeth was just to be, the controlling company, and then they have a separate operations company, that's fine. Or they sublease it out to somebody else to do the gas, that's fine too, to start production. I just find the whole extra creation of OIlco rather interesting. And the fact that there's shares attached and the shares really don't match up 1-to-1. And that's what raises my eyebrow to this. Well, that was the analysis of the spinoff. Again, I found the shares in OIlco to be rather interesting because they don't really line up with the current MMTLP, former Torchlight shares. And they don't really line up with the metamaterial shares, although that's a completely separate entity at this point. I'm not sure where OIlco is. So OIlco, I've been saying this. I think OIlco is something else. It's there to trick you. I don't know. It wouldn't be out of the realm, I'd say, for a trick at this point. OIlco. George's Greek guy. So I'm going to cite that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where the dad is always saying like how every word can be formulated to a Greek word. And then the sassy daughter says, well, what about kimono? And he's like, kimono comes from the Greek word chemo, which means winter. And what do you wear in winter when it's cold? A robe. And so, okay, so this is a big fat Greek wedding, Greek word. OIlco sounds like the Greek word and yogurt brand. Oikos, which is Greek for home. That's just a loose association at this point. I don't know. George has done cryptic stuff before, right? It could be a partnership, or it could be something for way later down the road. So if there is a spinoff at this point, I'm not sure if OIlco will be involved because of that share discrepancy. Again, to make it equal out to the current MMTLP shares. So let's take what we know to try and formulate some numbers and do some math and stoichiometry. So there are 5 rigs that they're currently drilling on the property, and then they're currently recompleting 2 older wells. There's another well on the property, the Cactus well, which I've used as a reference in other video, which currently can produce up to 1,500 barrels of oil a day. If you take the 2 wells that they're recompleting, the 5 that they're drilling, plus this, okay, that's a total of 8 wells. 8 wells. 8 wells at 1,500 barrels a day. If you multiply 8 of those wells times 1,500 barrels a day, you're looking at about 12,000 barrels a day in production. Multiply that by 365 days a year, and you have 4.38 million barrels of oil in a year. Now, current oil prices today, and we'll take 82 from the other day, minus cost of goods sold, about 25, you're looking at 57. Torchlight gets 49.9% of that revenue, so about 49%. There's going to be other expenses too, to which they pay 65% of that cost. They have 65% working interest, so they pay 65% of the bills. They get 49% of the profits. That's how working interest and revenue interest equals out. It can get very convoluted in the oil industry. So 57 bucks a barrel a day, right? They're entitled to 49% of that as a revenue interest. So 57 gives us $27.93 a barrel. That's pre-tax, by the way, pre-tax. Times this many barrels a year, 4.38 million. And you are left with, if you multiply the 2 together, you get $122 million. That's pre-tax. Tax man. So you have federal tax, corporate tax. You have other overhead fees too that are not with this, like office fees, administrative fees. Lots of overhead fees. Let's look at the tax. So you have a federal tax rate, and then in Texas you have another tax on top of that. So Texas doesn't have federal taxes. We do have franchise tax, which is about 1.5%. This is definitely a franchise tax. You have to make over $1.5 million to get franchise tax. And then you have a mineral tax on top of that because you extracted minerals from the land, which is about 7.5%. Sorry, the mineral extraction is 6.5% in Texas. So 6.5 plus 1.5% is 8%, plus the corporate tax. You're looking at 29% taxes. So you must take 29% out. So that means you multiply it by 1 minus the tax rate. So 1 minus 0.29, and you get 71. So you multiply this number by 71. We know that oil equipment can be depreciated to 0, and it has an aggressive schedule. So those rigs are gonna, $2.5 million a pop. They made 7 new ones, and you can depreciate it over 7 years. So basically, you're looking at $2.5 million of depreciation in a year. Not too bad. So let's take out some depreciation. Let's say 80 million. There's a little bit more overhead depreciation. $80 million. 80 million divided by the MMTLP, which is 165 million. You get 48 cents for every share you have. 48.48 cents. So in terms of dollars, you get this 48 cents, essentially 48.84 cents. If you have 1,000 MMTLP shares, you multiply this by 1,000, then you get $484. Hooray. That'd be a yearly if they declare dividends. Not every company declares a dividend, but you will be entitled to a pro rata share. Okay, as stated with previous SEC filings. What if this goes to OIlco? That's an if. OIlco has 250 million common shares, but only 25 million preferred shares. That's the dividend one. How would we translate MMTLP to OIlco preferred shares? Well, if there are 165 million OIlco shares and 165 million MMTLP shares and only 25 million preferred OIlco shares, that gives us a ratio of 6.6 MMTLP to equal 1 OIlco share. For example, let's say you had 1,000 MMTLP. Now you divide that by the rate because you're going down. You divide by 6 MMTLP to equal 1 OIlco share. You are left with, you would have 151 preferred OIlco shares. Going back to that 80 million a year net revenue, if there was about, it could be less. Again, that's a new company startup. If there's an 80 million, this is generous. If there's an $80 million revenue, there's only 25 million preferred OIlco shares at $3.2 per OIlco share on an annual basis if they declare a dividend. Not everybody declares dividends, but so let's say you start out with 1,000 MMTLP shares. They get converted to OIlco shares, preferred OIlco shares at this current exchange rate, 6.6. You get 151. You multiply the dividend by how many shares of OIlco you have. 3.2 times 151. And you get $483, which is pretty similar. But again, that exchange rate works out. So you get about $483 a year, which can go either way. So I am not sure what's what right now. I don't see why you just use MMTLP, but maybe OIlco, because then you can't trade it. Or maybe it's a separate entity and this was planned in case you could. I'm not sure on the workings of that. but that just gives you a brief estimate if they do go into production, what to expect if they issue a dividend. They might not issue a dividend. Okay, that was the math. In closing, I'm not sure if OIlco is related. I don't think they are, but there's a possibility it could be related, and if it is, here's the exchange rate. If they produce oil, there you go. You know what to expect. Regardless of OIlco preferred shares or MMTLP, if they produce oil, you might get, 48 cents a dividend, or you might get, which would be, 1,000, look at that, that equals out, or you might get 3.2 for every one OIlco share you have. The stoichiometry works out. And big takeaway is when there's a spinoff, there's a big sell-off when that happens. So if there is a spinoff, expect a sell-off. Play that how you wish. If there is a spinoff, again, expect another big sell-off. People think squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Maybe not, because the mentality is sell-off and short sellers are going to be there. They're going to be there like, yeah. There's always a sell-off when there's a spinoff. Spinoff, sell-off, spinoff, sell-off. They'll be ready. Okay. OIlco could be something completely different at this point. I don't know. We can only speculate. Again, this was speculation. This wild story of speculation. And we did some crazy math. We did some crazy stoichiometry here. If OIlco is involved, and how would it be involved, and what to expect, and what to expect with the MMTLP spin out as it is. I know oil is increasing. Again, addendum. I know oil is increasing. But there's going to be an immense amount of cost to start up a full production company. More so than just a company coming in. Sort of like when you get your first horse. You have to buy all this stuff for the horse. The horse is like the least amount. You got to get a trailer. If you don't have a truck, you got to get a truck. You got to get a horse barn. Horse food. Horse blankets. Saddles. Blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. Farrier, vet. Once you get that second horse, it's like it's not as expensive because you already have everything set up. Okay, end of rant. I hope you were entertained by this video. It took a lot of effort. Videos take a considerable amount of effort. Glad you enjoy them. See you next time.